In the early hours of 2026, the world woke up to one of the most dangerous military escalations in modern history. Missiles and airstrikes lit up the skies across Iran as the United States and its allies launched a massive coordinated attack targeting Iranian military bases, missile systems, and nuclear facilities. Within hours, the region was thrown into chaos. Iran responded almost immediately with waves of ballistic missiles and drones aimed at American bases and Israeli targets across the Middle East. What had long been a simmering conflict had suddenly exploded into open war. But the truth is, this conflict did not begin in 2026. The roots of the hostility between the United States and Iran stretch back more than 70 years. In 1953, during the height of the Cold War, the United States helped orchestrate a coup that removed Iran's democratically elected prime minister and restored the Shah, a monarch who ruled the country with strong support from Washington. For decades, Iran was considered one of America's closest allies in the Middle East, but that alliance would collapse dramatically in 1979. That year, the Iranian Islamic Revolution overthrew the Shah and replaced his government with a new Islamic republic led by revolutionary clerics who strongly opposed Western influence. The new leadership accused the United States of exploiting Iran's resources and interfering in its politics. Later that same year, Iranian militants stormed the U.S. embassy in Tehran and took 52 American diplomats hostage for 444 days. The hostage crisis shocked the world and permanently destroyed relations between the two nations. From that moment forward, the United States and Iran became bitter enemies. Washington imposed heavy economic sanctions while Iran built its identity around resisting American influence in the Middle East. For years, the tension remained mostly political and economic. But the conflict entered a dangerous new phase in the early 2000s, when the international community discovered that Iran had been secretly developing elements of a nuclear program. The United States and several of its allies believed Iran was attempting to build nuclear weapons, something they said could destabilize the entire region. Iran denied those accusations, insisting its nuclear program was only intended for peaceful energy production. In 2015, after years of negotiations, Iran and several world powers reached a historic nuclear agreement designed to limit Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for lifting economic sanctions. For a brief moment, it seemed like tensions might finally ease, but the agreement eventually collapsed and distrust returned almost immediately. Iran began expanding parts of its nuclear program again, while the United States increased sanctions and military pressure. At the same time, another struggle was unfolding across the Middle East. Iran had been expanding its regional influence by supporting allied groups and governments in places like Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. This network of allies became known as the Axis of Resistance. To Iran, these partnerships were a way to protect itself and challenge American dominance in the region. But to the United States and its allies, Iran's growing influence represented a serious threat to regional stability and to the security of Israel. For years, the two sides fought indirectly through cyber attacks, sanctions, covert operations, and proxy conflicts across the region, but the tension continued to build. Then everything changed when a series of military strikes triggered a direct confrontation. Attacks on Iranian facilities and leaders sparked retaliation, and the cycle of escalation quickly spiraled out of control. By the time the massive airstrikes of 2026 began, the region was already on the edge of war. As missiles flew across the Middle East and military bases came under attack, the conflict began sending shockwaves far beyond the battlefield. One of the biggest concerns quickly became the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula through which nearly a fifth of the world's oil supply passes. Iran threatened to block the strait, raising fears of a global energy crisis. Oil prices surged and governments around the world began preparing for economic fallout. At its core, the conflict revolves around power, security, and influence. The United States says its goal is to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons and to limit its military reach across the Middle East. Iran, on the other hand, argues that it is defending its sovereignty and resisting foreign interference. Both sides see the other as a direct threat to their national security. What makes the situation even more dangerous is the number of countries and groups that could become involved. The United States maintains military bases throughout the region and has powerful allies, including Israel and several Gulf states. Iran also has strong regional partners and armed groups that could open new fronts in the conflict. Every missile launch and every retaliatory strike increases the risk that the war could spread even further. What began decades ago as political mistrust has now evolved into one of the most dangerous geopolitical confrontations in the world. And as the fighting continues, the question facing the international community is no longer just why these two nations are fighting. The real question is how far this war could go, and whether it can be stopped before it pulls the entire region and possibly the world into an even larger conflict.